My name is Senna, and I was 26 years old when I walked into a law office that smelled like old paper and expensive wood polish, fully expecting to leave with nothing. I remember the exact date, November 12th. It was raining. The kind of gray, miserable rain that soaks through your coat before you even reach the door. I'd taken the bus because my car had been repossessed 3 months earlier. I was late by 7 minutes because the transfer never came on time. When I walked into that conference room, everyone was already seated. My Aunt Diane, my Uncle Robert, my cousins Jessica, Mark, and Sarah, my mother. All of them arranged around a long mahogany table like they'd been there for hours, even though the appointment wasn't scheduled to start for another 23 minutes. They didn't look up when I came in. Jessica was texting. Mark was checking his watch. My mother stared at the window. And my Aunt Diane, the oldest, the one who'd been controlling Grandma's finances from afar for the last 5 years, kept her hand resting on top of a leather-bound folder like she already owned it. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was an older man with silver hair and thick glasses. He nodded at me when I sat down at the very end of the table, the seat closest to the door. The seat for the person everyone expects to leave first. I remember the silence in that room. Not a comfortable silence. The kind of silence where people are holding their breath, waiting, anticipating. They knew I'd been invited. The law requires notification. They just assumed I'd be sitting in the cheap seats, watching them collect what they'd already spent in their minds. I'd known for 2 years that I was the outcast. It started when I refused to lie to the nursing home about Grandma's insurance. Diane had asked me to sign something that wasn't true, something about Grandma's assets being lower than they actually were. I wouldn't do it. Diane said I was being dramatic. She said I didn't understand how the system worked. She said I was making things harder for everyone. After that, family dinners stopped including me. Holiday invitations stopped arriving. My calls to Grandma's room at the facility were always intercepted, not by Diane herself, but by her instructions. She called the front desk every morning. She didn't need to be there to control everything. The last time I saw my grandmother alive was 11 months before she died. I'd driven 2 hours to the nursing home. When I got to the front desk, the receptionist, a woman named Carla who'd always been kind to me, glanced at a pink sticky note on her monitor. Then she looked at me with something like apology. "I'm sorry, Senna. Mrs. Collins isn't receiving visitors today." Diane's instructions? Carla didn't answer. She didn't have to. I sat in the parking lot for an hour that day, watching the rain run down my windshield. Then I noticed a side door, the one the nursing assistants used for smoke breaks. I waited until Carla went to the bathroom. I walked in through that side door. I found Grandma's room on the second floor. She was awake. Lying in bed, a thin blanket pulled to her chest, her white hair spread across the pillow like cobwebs. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Then she grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were thin and cold, but her grip was strong. She pulled me close and whispered, "Senna, I know everything. I know what they've been doing." I asked her what she knew. She just smiled. The kind of smile that isn't happy, the kind that's tired and knowing and a little bit sad. "You'll see," she said. "I've been working with Mr. Henderson. Don't give up on me." Then footsteps in the hallway. Diane's voice, asking Carla where she'd put the visitor log. Grandma let go of my wrist. I slipped out the side stairwell, drove home, and didn't tell a soul. That was the last time I saw her alive. Diane visited Grandma maybe once a month after that. 20 minutes, tops. Long enough to sign papers, complain about the drive, and remind the staff who was in charge. She didn't sit with Grandma. She didn't hold her hand. But every morning at 8:15, she called the front desk. Every phone call I tried to make was routed to Diane's voicemail. Every card I mailed was returned unopened. By the time Grandma died in June, I hadn't seen her face in 11 months, but I'd heard her voice. Those whispered words. "I know everything. Don't give up on me." No one called to tell me she was gone. I found out from a Facebook post, a tribute written by Jessica, full of photographs of everyone except me. The comments were full of sympathy. "She raised such a close family. You were all so devoted to her. She must have been so proud of all of you." I sat on my couch, In my one-bedroom apartment with the water-stained ceiling and the radiator that clanked all night, and I stared at that post until my phone screen dimmed and went black. The funeral was 3 days later. I wasn't told the time or the location. I had to call the funeral home myself, and even then, the woman on the phone hesitated before giving me the address. Like someone had told her to be careful with me. I went anyway. I stood in the back row, wearing the only black dress I owned, one I'd bought 3 years earlier for a job interview I didn't get. No one spoke to me. My mother walked past me in the parking lot without making eye contact. Diane stood at the front, accepting condolences, playing the role of the grieving granddaughter. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue even though I never saw a single tear. Jessica caught my eye once. Just for a second. Then she looked away. I didn't stay for the reception. I drove home, borrowed a neighbor's car, and I sat in my apartment in the dark and tried to figure out why Diane hated me enough to erase me completely. That was 5 months ago. Now I was sitting in Mr. Henderson's conference room, soaked from the rain, watching my family pass around a bowl of wrapped mints like this was a celebration. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I know this is a difficult time." Diane nodded solemnly. She was wearing a black blazer, pearl earrings, and the exact expression of someone who'd already counted her share. She wasn't nervous. She had no reason to be. As far as she knew, she'd controlled everything for 5 years. Grandma's money, Grandma's access, Grandma's narrative. But Diane didn't know about the side door. She didn't know about the whispered promise. And she didn't know that Grandma had been meeting with Mr. Henderson every time Diane drove away after those 20-minute visits. "Before I read the will," Mr. Henderson continued, "I want to acknowledge that your grandmother was very specific about how she wanted this handled. She left detailed instructions. And she asked that I read every word exactly as she wrote it." Jessica exchanged a glance with Mark. Mark smiled slightly. They all thought they knew what was coming. I sat perfectly still. My hands were cold. The rain was still hitting the window behind me. Mr. Henderson opened the folder. The first page was standard names, dates, legal language. He read through it quietly. No one was really listening. Everyone was waiting. Then he turned to the second page. "To my daughter Diane, I leave my collection of antique brooches, as she always admired them." Diane's smile was small and satisfied. "To my son Robert, I leave my grandfather's pocket watch and a sum of $15,000. Robert nodded once. "To my granddaughter Jessica, I leave my dining room table and china cabinet." Jessica's smile was quick and bright. "To my grandson Mark, I leave my record collection and vintage stereo." Mark leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking pleased. "To my granddaughter Sarah, I leave my sewing machine and fabric collection." Sarah wrote something in her phone, barely looking up. She wasn't a thief, but she'd watched. She'd scrolled past Jessica's bragging texts for years. She'd said nothing. That was her guilt. Mr. Henderson paused. He adjusted his glasses. Then he looked at my mother, who still hadn't looked at me once. "To my daughter Margaret, I leave a letter which will be given to her privately after this reading." My mother's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Then Mr. Henderson closed the folder. And that's when my cousin Jessica spoke. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just set down her mint, looked directly at me for the first time in 3 years, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't deserve a single dollar." The room went quiet. Not the quiet from before. This was different. This was the quiet of a trap snapping shut. Diane nodded. Robert glanced at the table. Mark's smile widened. Sarah didn't look up from her phone. And my mother, my own mother, just stared at the window like she hadn't heard anything at all. Jessica turned to Mr. Henderson, her voice smooth and confident. "She hasn't visited Grandma in over a year. She wasn't there when Grandma was sick. She didn't help with anything. We all know she only showed up today because she wants money." No one defended me. No one said, "That's not true." No one mentioned the phone calls routed to voicemail. The cards returned unopened. The funeral I had to find on my own. They just sat there, in their expensive coats and polished shoes, and let Jessica rewrite history. And then Mr. Henderson did something I didn't expect. He closed the folder. He smiled. And he said 5 words that changed everything. Actually, he said, looking directly at Jessica, your grandmother left everything to the person who helped her uncover the thief in this family. The room went dead silent. 3 people turned pale before the lawyer even said my name. Mr. Henderson didn't rush. That was the thing about him. He'd been practicing law for 42 years, and he knew exactly how to let silence do the work. He turned to me. Just a small shift of his body. But everyone followed his gaze. The full inheritance, he said calmly, including the house on Cedar Street, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, and all remaining personal property, is left to my granddaughter, Senna Elise Morrison. Jessica's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Diane's hand, which had been resting so confidently on that leather folder, began to tremble. Mark stopped smiling. Sarah finally looked up from her phone. Her face had gone pale. She wasn't a thief, but she'd known. She'd scrolled past. She'd said nothing. Now the silence was coming due. And my mother turned away from the window for the first time since I'd walked in. Her face was unreadable. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty. That's not possible, Diane said. Her voice was quiet. Controlled. The voice of someone who'd spent years managing situations from behind a phone. There must be a mistake. My mother wasn't in her right mind when she signed that. Mr. Henderson removed his glasses and set them on the table. He looked tired. Not annoyed, genuinely tired, like he'd seen this exact scene play out 100 times before. Mrs. Collins, he said, your mother's mental capacity was evaluated by 2 independent physicians 3 months before she passed. Both certified that she was of sound mind. She was evaluated again on the day she signed. I was present. I've been practicing law since 1982. I do not make mistakes. Diane's jaw tightened. Her pearl earrings caught the light as she shook her head slowly. She was manipulated. Someone got to her when she was vulnerable. Someone she hadn't seen in almost a year. Actually, Mr. Henderson said, and that word again, actually, made everyone flinch. Your mother and I met regularly. Every time you left after your 20-minute visits, she called me. We spoke for hours. She kept detailed records. And she asked that I read something before I distributed any assets. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin blue notebook. Worn. The cover creased. Pages marked with sticky notes in 4 different colors. She asked me to read selected entries aloud. Would you like me to do that now? No one answered. But no one said no either. Mr. Henderson opened the notebook to a page marked with a yellow sticky note. He cleared his throat. June 14th, Diane took another $300 from my purse today. She said it was for groceries, but I saw the new dress in her car. She only stayed for 15 minutes. Didn't ask how I was feeling. Just took the cash and left. I didn't say anything. I'm learning to keep quiet and watch. He turned the page. August 3rd, Diane called the nursing home and told them I wanted to change my insurance paperwork. I didn't. But she signed something anyway. I saw my name on the bottom of a form I never touched. Senna warned me about this 2 years ago. I should have listened. Another page. January 22nd. Jessica came to visit today. Not to see me. To take the silverware from the dining room. She said she was borrowing it for a party. I haven't seen it since. Mark took the television last week. He said it was broken. I saw it in the back of his truck, still working. Mr. Henderson turned another page. And another. And another. Each entry was short. Dated. Specific. The kind of documentation someone keeps when they know they're being stolen from but don't yet have the strength to stop it until they do. November 5th. Senna came to visit today. Diane had her blocked at the front desk again. But Senna found a way in the side door. She sat with me for 20 minutes before Diane's call came through. I told her I knew everything. I told her not to give up. She hugged me and left through the stairwell. I wrote down her number again. Hid it under my mattress. Mr. Henderson closed the notebook. The room was absolutely silent. Not the silence of waiting. The silence of people realizing they've been caught. Jessica's face had gone gray. Mark was staring at the table like it might open up and swallow him. Sarah had her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes, Not because she'd stolen anything, but because she'd watched and said nothing for years. And Diane. Diane sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table. Her pearl earrings still caught the light, but her knuckles were white. "Mrs. Collins," Mr. Henderson said quietly, "I have copies of all the bank records. I have witness statements from 3 nurses at the facility, including Carla at the front desk. I have security footage from the dates your daughter and grandchildren took items from your mother's room. And I have a letter from your mother, notarized and witnessed, requesting that I assist Senna in pursuing legal action against anyone who attempts to contest this will." Diane's control cracked. Just slightly. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but it wasn't grief. It was rage. The kind of rage that comes from being outmaneuvered. "You think this makes you better than us?" she said, looking at me for the first time. Her voice was shaking. "You came 3 times. 3. Real family doesn't stop trying because someone says no at a front desk. Real family breaks through. Real family." "I did break through," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady. Calm. I didn't know I had that in me. I found the side door. I sat with her. She told me she knew everything. And then your phone call came, and I had to leave through the stairwell like a criminal. But I saw her. I held her hand. "What did you do during your 20-minute visits, Diane? Did you even sit down?" Diane stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. "This isn't over." "It is," Mr. Henderson said. "The will is valid. The assets will be transferred according to your mother's wishes. Any legal challenge will be met with the documentation I've already prepared. And I should add, your mother requested that I share this journal with the family. All of it, including the pages I didn't read aloud." Jessica stood up next. She didn't look at me. She looked at Diane, and something passed between them, an understanding, maybe, or an accusation. Then she walked out. Mark followed. Sarah hesitated, looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, guilt, maybe, or relief, and then left too. My mother was the last to move. She stood up slowly, picked up her purse, walked to the door. Then she stopped, turned, looked at me. "You could have told me," she said. I shook my head. "You could have asked. Any of the hundreds of times you saw me being pushed out of this family. You could have said one word. You didn't." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she walked out without another word. The door closed. And then it was just me and Mr. Henderson and the rain still hitting the window. That was 3 months ago. Mr. Henderson asked me if I wanted to press charges. Criminal theft. Fraud. Elder financial abuse. I had the evidence. The bank records. The witness statements. The security footage. I thought about it for a long time. 2 weeks. I sat in Grandma's house, the house on Cedar Street, and I walked through every room. The kitchen where she taught me to make pie crust. The living room where she read me stories. The bedroom where she whispered, "Don't give up on me." In the end, I said no. Grandma didn't build that evidence to destroy them. She built it to protect me. And I was already protected. She wanted the family to have a chance to walk away quietly. Not because they deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace. Diane moved to Florida within a month. Jessica and Mark don't speak to anyone in the family anymore. Sarah calls me sometimes. She apologized. Said she should have spoken up years ago. I told her silence was a choice, but so was apology. We're not close. But we're not enemies either. My mother sent me a letter last week. 3 pages. She didn't apologize exactly, but she wrote, "I should have seen it sooner." I haven't written back yet. I will. Someday. The house is mine now. I fixed the roof last month. Painted the porch. Planted new flowers in her garden. The neighbors have started waving at me again. They remember me from when I was a little girl, before everything got complicated. The money isn't what matters. I know that sounds like something people say to seem noble, but it's true. What matters is that Grandma saw me, even when I couldn't see myself, even when everyone else looked away. She knew everything. And in the end, she made sure the truth had a voice. If you've ever been the one pushed out, the one erased from the narrative, the one who found the side door when everyone else used the front, stay with yourself. Someone is watching. Someone is remembering. And sometimes, they leave you more than money. They leave you the last word.